Hello and welcome to Inside Gov, where we pull back the curtain on the government of Jersey and introduce you to some of the people who keep the island running. My guest today is Tom Holvey, Chief Economic Advisor to the government of Jersey, and we're going to be talking about what the government's doing to help people build a future in Jersey and how the economy fits into all of that. But first, Tom, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what made you decide to come to the island?
Yeah, absolutely. I decided to come here because the challenge is fantastic. Being the chief economic advisor for a nation, for an island nation, is very interesting from an economic point of view. You get to be involved in every issue. You get to be very much involved in economic growth, which is my biggest passion and where I've worked most in. And I've got past experience of doing a similar job, although a much smaller island, for the St Helena government, where I was the chief economist there for 3 years as well. Uh, Knowing how that then works in terms of being able to actually be at the heart of economic policy, economics across a whole different range of issues is really exciting and interesting. Um, I was I'm a public servant through and through, and I've worked across a variety of different organisations, from local authorities to Whitehall. My most recent job was as the chief economist for the UK Investment Bank, UK Infrastructure Bank, now the National Wealth Fund. I did that for a year before coming here, and previously had roles leading for Brexit for the Department of Health. I was at the heart of COVID PPE recovery program, leading on that for a year during the pandemic, and a variety of different roles across local government and the UK civil service. So hopefully a lot of that experience lends itself well to being in Jersey and doing a job like this.
There's a real wealth of experience.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. So, we're going to talk about what the government here is doing to help people build a future here. And obviously, the economy is central to that. How would you characterize the state of Jersey's economy at the moment?
So we're a very wealthy place, and that doesn't mean that everyone's doing well, but that is actually a really interesting starting point. So we are a wealthy nation, effectively, but that doesn't mean that we don't have problems. It doesn't mean that the state of the economy is as good as it could be. There's an awful lot of global economic problems at this moment in time. There's a shifting world order, which feeds through to the economics and economy in particular, and we've got to be very, very wary of that. Jersey is a strong position. The way I characterise it is it has a very strong balance sheet, in that we have very little debt, lots of strong assets, great reserves in place. So most nations aren't in that position in terms of strength. That's a really good starting position. But at the same time, the pressures are coming through, and you would characterize that as having quite a weak P&L. We have significant strains on our expenditure, in particular due to an aging population, which I'll talk about a bit more later on, I'm sure. And we have a very specific tax base and a tax model that means that we have constraints around what we can spend in any given year. That includes going back to that not having much debt. We don't borrow, which again is a strength, but it does mean that to some extent we are limited to our options of where we can grow some of the needed expenditure for an aging population, the expectations that come from the wider public, and ensuring that we can actually meet all those expectations of where we are. So we start from a strong position, but there's a lot of threats coming down the road, not both globally and from our own island characteristics, and we need to be acutely aware of those so that we can make sure that we deal with them in plenty of time.
We hear a lot of talk at the moment about the so-called bean drain.
Yes.
This phenomenon of locally born people leaving the island, people saying it's too expensive, or for whatever reason they don't want to build a future here. What does that mean for the economy?
For the economy specifically, it's a really interesting one. That you want a certain level of churn in the labour market. You want to bring in the right level of skills and experience to the labour market to ensure that we can thrive. That's not always from a stable population in any given place, and that would be any city in the UK, any island across the world. Even a big nation like the UK will often want to import certain labour, certain specialist skills. Either it's not able to produce enough of those skills, enough of those areas of expertise, or you want the very best as well to be operating in that. In terms of what you also want people from the island to do is actually get world experience to come in back to the island for the economy. So we do hear a lot about sort of the being drained. From an economic point of view, it's not necessarily that bad a thing, but we do want to make sure that what is important is we want to make sure that if people want to stay on the island, they can thrive and have opportunities to do it. So we need to ensure we have a balanced economy that enables that to happen at the same time. So it's less of an economic issue and more of a social one, which is no less important for it. We obviously also do want to make the most of our own talent and to make the most of the skills that are already here and give people that opportunity to thrive where they live and where they want to. There will always be a level of churn. I'm not from Jersey. I grew up in Lincoln, and I left Lincoln to go to university when I was 18, and have not lived there again, and probably won't live there. Not lived there since, and probably won't live there again. There's nothing wrong with Lincoln. I love it, but it just means it wasn't the right fit for me, and I can't actually achieve what I wanted to in a place such as that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that people are seeking to leave, get different experiences, but it would have been very nice if they can come back, and even better that if people don't want to leave, we provide them with the opportunities to stay and thrive.
Right. And I mean, okay, some of the people say they want to leave for opportunity, but some people say they're leaving because of the cost of living. What effect does the high cost of living have on Jersey's economy, and what can we do about that?
So the cost of living is a phenomenon across the entire world at this moment in time. You hear all sorts of arguments. A very common one you hear about the cost of living is how it factors down into quite small elements, like the price of eggs in America is very, very political, very high topic area at this moment in time. Says a lot about their economy. Was used heavily in their elections. There's no doubt that the cost of living across the world is increasing and will continue to increase because of certain global tensions and positions that are being taken at this moment in time. In Jersey, it feels different. Perhaps the price of eggs, comes through particularly in housing, and it even comes through different to what the cost of living feels like in the UK. When the cost of living started to be talked about in the UK 3 years ago or so, it was about very high energy prices, incredibly high levels of energy prices in terms of increases. It was about increases in tax take as well, and some of the increases that were feeding through because of COVID. In Jersey, it's very much about housing, and it's about that high base of housing costs that before you even begin to talk about the other bits of the cost of living. And once you have that sort of eating into your monthly pay packet straight away, it doesn't give you a lot of headroom to then actually have any shocks, any problems elsewhere. And we have just had a high period of inflation, as we've seen globally, and that's hit us on the island. But there's no doubt that housing here is our number one problem around the cost of living, and it has been for some time. It has not changed recently. It just means you've got less room to maneuver when other pressures hit you as well. So it's very important to try and ensure that we can address that issue around housing, and trying to ensure that we can stabilise housing prices and costs of housing, not necessarily reduce, because that comes with other problems, but stabilise some of those things whilst we can grow the economy to catch up with it. That's the ideal situation. Some of that has been happening over the last 2 or 3 years as well. So we have seen improvements. That gap between housing prices and wages has been narrowing. It has reversed the trend of what it had for the previous 20 years or so, which is very positive, but there's still a long way to go.
Okay. From an economic point of view, why can't we fix the housing situation just by building more housing?
Things are always a little bit more complicated than that, as you will appreciate.
Sure.
That sits behind that question anyway. So demand and supply, one of the most basic economic concepts, is nearly always at the root of most prices and costs of things. And undoubtedly, that's got a major part to play in that as well. Demand and supply, and getting the optimized level of demand and supply in a small geography with a small population is difficult. Things work more effectively over large markets. The larger the market, the more effective, the more you can optimize things, and the better the market will work as well. So when you've got a population of 100,000, 103,000 people and a small geographic position, it makes it harder to solve straight away. So we can build more, and that would undoubtedly have some impact. But what's really important, and it becomes more important in a smaller economy, is you build the right the right units that people want at any given time. That flexibility in a smaller market is more difficult. The market signals in a smaller market are more difficult. So the market signal, this type of property is very popular at this moment in time, does not feed through in the same way to house builders and in the same way that it might do in larger markets. So that becomes difficult. So the whole ecosystem doesn't quite work as well as it would do in a larger area. What's really important is not necessarily building more properties, it's building the right properties at the right time, and that's quite hard to do. So we have seen an influx into the property market of certain types of properties in recent months and the last year or two, and now perhaps we now need to move on and make sure that we've got the right supply for family homes, the homes that people want to live in the future, but also actually allowing our aging population to adapt to where they want to be as well. And that's the next stages, I think, which is really important. So building the right properties at the right time is more important than just any properties.
Right. Moving on to the question of the aging population. We have an aging population in Jersey. We have working age people are leaving, and the number of people who are of pension age is rising. What does that mean for the economy?
And I think I need to start off by, this is not about demonizing older people at all.
Sure.
I know that I've talked about this topic a lot, and some people do kind of think that we're all getting older, and I would like to be an old person one day as well, and not be demonized. It's actually about providing for those people as well. But there is an economic reality about that. People do, when they get older, retire, and they do generally cost the health system and other systems more than people do when they are younger. That's just an economic reality. It might not be the case for every individual. There will still be people working and paying taxes well into their 70s and even their 80s, and there will be people who stay very fit and healthy well into their 70s and 80s and never have a visit to a hospital. But as a general rule, what happens is you pay less into the system and you take more out of the system. And when you have an aging population, that problem becomes more acute for the state. So in particular, everyone's talking about the cost of the health system in Jersey and across the Western Europe and the Western world, because our health systems are costing more and more. And if you have fewer people working and paying taxes into the system, you also have that double whammy where the revenues are not keeping up with the expenditure that's needed. That's it, very, very simply. We end up spending more whilst actually being able to produce less. And that double whammy becomes a major problem.
Right. I mean, I've seen reports that in order to sustain our current standard of living, we need the population to rise to 150,000 by 2040. Does that mean we have to reconcile ourselves to a more crowded island?
Absolutely not. That was a figure that we produced, and what we wanted to do is a bit of a test figure to have a debate on the island about what we do want the future of the island and the economy to look like. And what we calculated was, if we have this aging population, they need a certain amount of healthcare people to come in and serve that aging population at current ratios. They will have dependents themselves, and they will probably, more than likely, be an element of tax revenue that needs to go out to pay for those people to come across. If that's the case, and we need to therefore raise the taxes, we need more people in other industries outside of health to pay those taxes to pay for those people. So once you build that picture up of needing X thousand people to come in and serve the aging population from a pure healthcare perspective, people come in with them, and therefore we will need more teachers if they've got children. We'll need other services as well for those people, and then we need the tax revenues on top of that from another series of sectors. That's how we got to the position that we would need 150,000 people. What we also did through the Future Economy Programme is say we don't want to get there. We want to ensure that we can provide all these services and what is needed for the islanders within relative constraints of where we want to be. I think we all accept there needs to be some population growth because we need certain areas of labour, but we want to keep that as low as possible. And one of the key answers around that, along with the population that's needed, is as much productivity as we can possibly get out of the current system. The reason that productivity is really good is it means it needs fewer. We need fewer people to do the same jobs, and it means we actually get more output from those people at the same time. So what productivity would mean is it means we have to make the more productivity we can put into the system, the easier those choices in the future will be in terms of population numbers or whatever else, tax revenues or whatever it is else we need to take. So productivity becomes really important, but it cannot be the only answer. It's part of the solution. The other thing that is really important from a productivity point of view is that productivity is directly linked to living standards. And the reason why a lot of economists, certainly myself and people who work on economic growth, want to work in economics and grow economies is to make people's standard of living and people's lives better. And the productivity standard of living element is so closely aligned that the more productivity we can get into the system, the better the standard of living across the island will be as well. And that's really important. We need to make sure our standard of living does not go backwards from a first instance, but where we can try and improve that standard of living for everybody across the island as well. And that's why productivity becomes absolutely essential part of the solution to what we're proposing.
Can you just explain for non-economists what you mean by productivity? I mean, presumably that doesn't just mean people have to work harder.
It's almost the opposite of that. And that is how people talk about it quite often, is people think productivity means working longer hours and just working harder. Actually, productivity means getting more out of exactly the same amount of hours you're doing, or getting the same out of fewer hours. The exact measure of productivity is output over the hours you put in. So if you put more hours in, you will get economic growth, but you're not getting improved productivity anyway. So when we talk about productivity, we specifically don't mean people working harder. We don't mean them working longer. We do mean them getting more out of what they're putting in that given period, in that given hour, given day, whatever it happens to be. And you get that through better skills, better technology, use of capital, moving away from people doing certain roles into more automation. That's where you get those productivity gains. And you can see that right through history. All sorts of different inventions, whether it's actually around the house, which helps productivity around households, whether that's fridge freezers or washing machines, and into the wider economy in businesses as well, where businesses are nearly always becoming more productive, but it's the rate of productivity that becomes really important.
When you talk about automation, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean people losing their jobs.
It doesn't. It means, again, being able to use the tools that you've got available to actually do more. We in offices now all use emails and Teams, and that makes us more productive. It means that we can do more than we were doing before, whether that's because we no longer have to travel to a meeting, so that's actually half an hour back in our day to do more productive work than just walking, whether it means we can communicate better, get answers to things better. So those productivity gains are always happening at every level. And when you talk about automation, you can now start using certain tools to help you write reports, to help you do better calculations, which again means that actually we maybe do need fewer people to do the jobs, or we can reposition those people into jobs that you can't automate, which is a really important part of this. But I can do more on a daily basis than I could have done 20 years ago, and that makes me more productive as well. It doesn't mean that the job's not there. It means that I'm able to do the things that are more important, like thinking about some of the bigger challenges, like actually communicating some of that better, rather than more menial tasks.
Right. I mean, when you talk about, are we looking at a future where we're going to have robots fixing our cars, robots making us coffee? Is that?
It's difficult to ever predict where these things go, and economists don't like to do that as well.
Right.
We like to allow the market to provide these answers. I think at the moment we're talking less about robotics and more about thinking and helping production of things where you've got heavy word artificial intelligence in these types of elements at the moment, and that's helping with more the tasks around sort of writing calculations, those kind of tasks, report writing. We're not thinking about the robotic side of it at this moment in time. But there's no doubt that even within elements of that, robotics of building cars has been around for a very long time. We're maybe getting into a period where self-driving cars start to occur that fundamentally changes our transport system, and again has big impacts on productivity. But we need to think about that, how that means for the labour market and people, and how we reskill and upskill people in those kinds of roles as well. But even in those more nebulous areas, you are seeing gains and different improvements, different changes that will fundamentally change what we need in the economy.
Right. I, according to the government's own figures, Jersey's productivity has actually been falling and quite sharply, right? It's by 30% since 1998. Can you explain what that means and why that's happened?
So there's a lot of difficulty measuring productivity in Jersey in particular, because the finance sector is our biggest sector by a distance, and in particular within the finance sector, one of our biggest drivers of economic growth, certainly in recent years, is banking, and which is closely linked to interest rates. So productivity on the island as a macro measure at the highest level is often beholden to whatever's going on in interest rates at any one time. That's why we need to look underneath the surface and see what's going on across different sectors and in different areas. And we have seen some actual good productivity gains. We're famous for our agriculture on the island, for the quality of our agriculture, and rightly so. And that has made significant productivity gains in recent years, where you see automated shed cleaning, which is available on the island, automation of milking, much more so. Tagging around cows to know where they are, how their health is at any one point. They're productivity gains that have been made in a sector on the island that have had really good benefits for the island. So productivity is a difficult thing to get to grips with, and you've really got to understand it at quite as lower level, a micro level as you possibly can. But there's no doubt that the Western world, UK, Jersey, have had issues with productivity for some time now, and we need to ensure that we can reboost some of those productivity gains that we saw before the period you just mentioned, that were driving economic growth, and get back to that kind of position in the future. And that means having a very highly skilled workforce, so investing in skills. It means investing in capital much more than people as well, so that you have that move away from having people doing some of these tasks to where you can having robotization or whatever it happens to be. That investment in capital and investment full stop is really, really important. And that's the next stage that we want to be talking about, is that we've been talking about the productivity issue, we've been talking about aging population, and we wanted the island to understand those issues. And I think now that has landed. What we now need to move on to is, so what? And we are talking much more about investment and investing in businesses and helping businesses invest in themselves to make them as effective as they possibly can be. And that's the next stage of where we're going to be over the next few months. We've just launched, in fact, the launch is today, the Better Business Support Package, which is £13 million over the next 2 years in skills, apprenticeships, and investment in businesses to help businesses invest in themselves. And we will continue to look at how that investment, those investment cases can be made across the island to ensure that businesses can invest where they need to. Again, we're actually seeing the UK do something similar at the moment. It's all, their last budget was all about investing, particularly large scale infrastructure is what they were looking at, but also skills elements as well. And that investment has fallen away to quite a high degree across lots of the Western world in recent years. It's often the first thing to be cut when budgets become tight, and we've had that position since the financial downturn in 2008. It has meant we've had 15, nearly 20 years now of underinvestment across a whole host of areas. That's where we need to be reversing the trends, and that should start thinking about how it should start resulting in better and higher levels of productivity as well.
And is this very much about businesses improving the skills of their workforce, or is there a role for higher education in this as well?
Absolutely. There's a role for us all to play together. There is no doubt that businesses are the drivers of growth, and businesses know what they need from themselves. Government should not be in the business of telling businesses how to run their business, what they need to be doing. What we can do and what we should be doing is enabling them to do what they need to do themselves. And that's why the packages are based around paying more for apprenticeships, so that those labour market issues that I talked about balance and getting the right skills uplifts are in position for businesses, and we are putting the investment into businesses to match fund with them where they think they can make gains in productivity and investment. We're not telling them how to do it. We're just putting the finances there to match with them, and that's the really important point: is that businesses know how to run their own business, and that should not be government's job. We need to enable them and try and provide the best environment we can for them to run their business as effectively as possible.
Right. I think a lot of people in Jersey are nostalgic for the 1980s, when Jersey had this three-partite economy. You had the finance sector, you had tourism, you had agriculture, and these days it seems finance has grown and the other two have shrunk. Are we getting too one-sided? Do we need to diversify more?
It's a really, really good question. And the 80s, everyone, I wasn't here. And the 80s does always sound to be this really golden period that was absolutely fantastic. And you can see it in the economics, actually. You can see it in the statistics. There's a really interesting graph that I pull up quite often of the rises in the average salaries on the island. And it was all on the increase in the 80s and 90s period. And you can see today it's all flattened off. And it's almost, you can see what we would call the feel good factor on a graph. And that's what everyone talks about the 80s. In terms of diversification, it becomes very tricky. And I prefer to talk about balance, which I've talked about a few times before. Diversification, you're talking about diversification away from the financial service sector. And what actually is really important is to understand what the different interactions are between the different sectors and that they can all thrive. If you actively try to diversify away from the finance sector, you're actually moving away from the most productive sector pretty much in the world. I mean, not completely, but pretty much in the world, to less productive areas. And that will actually be negative for the island. What we do need to do is provide that extra balance and to understand that actually lots of other parts of the economy play just as an important role as financial services, even if the figures don't quite point to it in an economic way. I've had these discussions with the Jersey Hospitality Association and the Chamber of Commerce that you've got to have good offers on the island that actually help drive the financial services element, but not just for driving financial services, for providing balance and opportunity for a whole range of skills and people to be able to access jobs and work that they want to as well. So diversification is a really tricky one. It's thrown around quite a lot, I think, without really understanding what it actually means. Full diversification might actually be very problematic, or would be very problematic for the island. But that's not then mean that actually other things around balance and ensuring that the other sectors are well provided for and well supported is still really, really important. So I think it's just making sure we actually talk about it in the right terms so that we come up with the right solutions.
Are there other sectors Jersey should be looking to build more? I mean, you can look at comparable island economies that have done a lot with the gaming sector, for instance. Are there other sectors we should be looking at in Jersey?
I think we should always look for new opportunities. That's why actually there's been a lot of discussion about the wind farm recently. I don't think any nation in the history of the world has ever done badly out of energy production. And the next stage of energy production is very much around renewable energy for a variety of different reasons, where we see the global economic turbulence going on at the moment. Having your own energy production is really going to be, I think, really important in the future. It buys you into market negotiations, if nothing else. So that next stage, I think, is really important in terms of the global economy. Can Jersey play a role in that? There is a untapped need for clean energy from our neighbours in France and into the UK as they grow, electrify, and have to decommission current means of electrical production. So I think there probably is a role to play in that. What I've always said about wind from an economic point of view is it has to make economic sense. It has to stack up economically. And if it doesn't, and if we're subsidizing it, we should not do it, because we should be doing it for an economic reason rather than any other reason. But I do think there's an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity that's worth investigating further, and that could be something that actually we see as being a decent enabler to other parts of the economy in the future. Rivaling the financial service sector, or building another sector as big as the financial service sector, is probably unrealistic, realistically. I think we need to focus on what our strengths are, where our comparative advantage would be in the future, a term that economists use a lot, and make sure that the financial services sector can grow within itself whilst it's also supported by some of the other sectors to enable other growth, whether that's transport connections, hospitality, the right skills in the area as well. And agriculture plays its role in that as well. All these things are very interlinked. When people are looking for a good hospitality offer these days, they often want local produce, they want high quality produce that sits alongside that. That plays into our strengths with agriculture as well. So they all interlink very, very closely, and we need to ensure that we push all the levers around all the sectors to grow the economy as one, not as just one area that then sort of sucks the life out of the others. That's really important.
You mentioned investment in infrastructure in some other jurisdictions. Is Jersey's infrastructure good enough for the economy that we want and that we need?
We have really good infrastructure. Again, talking about starting from a good position, we have certainly was world leading, and is probably still world leading internet, that broadband capacity. We have excellent connections to energy, and relatively cheap energy across to France. We can still improve on that in the longer term. We do actually have, for an island this size, I think, a decent road network. It might not always feel like it at certain times. We have an international airport for 103,000 people that flies to a lot of northern routes, in particular the UK, but we're expanding that out as well. We obviously have a marine port as well, that can take access from the continent and to the UK as well. For an island of 103,000 people, we've got an awful lot of good infrastructure in place. That's not to say it can't be improved and needs to be improved. I think it's well known that we need to be doing a lot more about water on the island to enable population growth, about waste on the island, same kind of issue. That enables that growth to be in the right places as well. So you are always having to do infrastructure improvements just to stand still. But you can go over and above that to drive growth as well. And that's what we need to look at, of where those right investments would be. It's really important that a place has vibrancy and feels good, and infrastructure, urban realm, has big parts to play in that as well. And you can see across some areas of the United Kingdom and France and Spain and Germany, they've put lots of money in their infrastructure in a public realm point of view. If anyone goes to King's Cross, you can see the transformation that's happening around that station. That's not alone in London as well. So creating vibrancy, creating places where businesses want to invest is very much part of government's role, and we need to ensure that we can get that bit right looking forward over the next 10, 20 years as well.
You talked about connectivity and the infrastructure, and the Future Economy Programme talks about better connections with France. Is that a realistic prospect, and what are we doing to get them?
I think it is a realistic prospect, and it's setting the context in a regional economy, and our geographic region is those connections into France. And of course there are other barriers like language that mean that we're much closer to the UK, and the politics and sovereignty elements as well. But regional growth is a really important part of economic growth, and if you can build on the advantages that you have with each other, then that is only going to be beneficial. One example could be wind. So we have wind off St. Briac already. We're talking, so there is talk about Guernsey and wind as well. And the French government is putting significant investment in that area, in the waters around us. So there's no doubt that actually those regional connections would be really important, and we could maximise the investments we're putting in by taking advantage of those. that's just one small example. There are other examples on supply chains that we could think about, labor markets as well. There was a time, I'm told, and the information seems to point towards that, where our labor market was much closer shared with France. Don't think that's quite the case these days, with some small examples where it is. But that could be a future solution to part of our problems as well. So making sure that we're aware of these opportunities and where we can work together to maximize where we are is an important part. It's where most countries are in terms of working with their regions. Most regional areas, whether it's UK or France or Germany, look to regional partners as well. And it just so happens our closest regional partners are over the water in France. So it is something we need to continue looking at.
You said earlier that you worked on St. Helena, which obviously is a very remote island, where the geography means you have to be self-sufficient in a way that perhaps Jersey doesn't.
Yeah.
We can see France. Are we perhaps? I wonder if we're perhaps too caught up in being an island sometimes. So if you compare the two,
There is definitely something about an island mentality. I mean, not the UK, Great Britain has it, I think, as an island mentality. I think I definitely had that from a St. Helena point of view. You do feel you're that bit more independent, that more reliant on yourself, I think. And I think there is an argument that you do need, therefore, a different level of resilience for everything, and that's definitely actually the case, both psychologically and reality. When you are reliant on a ship coming over the water to bring an awful lot of your supplies, not just food but medical supplies that you can't produce on island, there is a different mentality to what you do, and the economies are different as well. And it's not just about an island. Scale is one of the most important concepts in economics. It's where the term economies of scale come from, which an awful lot of people will have heard of. When you don't have scale, which we don't, it makes things that little bit more difficult. It makes things a little bit more expensive. Your markets don't work in quite the right way. It means your solutions, where you might have competition or a monopoly, are different to what they would be if you have scale. And I think that's probably one of the most important concepts for us to grasp as an idea. It sounds obvious, but people still often see ourselves through the lens of a larger country with a large population, whereas the reality is the scale is so different. Our solutions are very different to what they would be in an area with a big population. Our problems are often the same, but the solutions need to be different. And that's why it's really important that we think these things through and talk about them and debate them as well. But just thinking about what islands mean, what that means for supply chains, but what that means for scale is really, really important.
that's very interesting. So I mean, just to wrap up, you said how you were excited to come to Jersey because of the opportunity. After your years here so far, are you still optimistic about the island?
Very much so. I now see some of the issues around how it's difficult to get things delivered at times, and why some of those elements feed in. But even with all the sort of stark area of economics around the world, there is real opportunity here because we're in a strong position at the moment, because actually we have all the right conditions when it's stability, the right levels of skills, which can always be improved, but the right levels of skills, the right kind of economic factors, where we can take advantage of some of these global turbulences that's going on at the moment. The chief executive spoke to the chamber lunch recently about just this. Actually, if we use our existing economic model to take advantage of turbulence around the rest of the globe, there is an opportunity for us there. But there's an opportunity in lots of different ways as well. I think the island is a fantastic place. It has so much going for it. And there are real threats coming down the road, but I think the opportunities outweigh them. It's just on us to try and ensure that we grasp those opportunities and make the changes where necessary to do that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.